Well, happy Halloween, everyone, and happy Training Tuesday. I am Heidi Reese, the Training Programs Manager at Dayton Superior, and I'm sitting here with Chuck Hoke, the National Training Manager.
Hi, Heidi.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to try to get a hi out of you. We're finishing up our precast October month with Coil and Ferrule inserts today. And with us is Taylor Blankenship. And I just want to go over a couple things first before we get to him. A couple of items. Everyone who has joined is muted so that we can not hear disturbances in the background for the recording. So that's leading into all of these are recorded and put on the YouTube channels for Dayton Superior as well as DaytonSuperior.com. Okay, so like typical, I just want to remind everyone that anything that this presentation is intended for training purposes only. Anything that we go over as far as parts, products, the technical specifications for the products mentioned can be found on DaytonSuperior.com. So you can go out there and find all your resources to see the technical questions that you may have and the answers to them. So Dayton Superior is a leading provider of engineered solutions. We talk about this almost every week. So my intent here is to let you know that we're not just about precast, but we're about accessories, whether they are the precast, the tilt up, the splicing, you name it. We also have chemicals that are both for retrofit and for your new product needs. And we have forming. With that, engineering and of course training. So we are a one-stop shop for you that houses anything that you might need for the product for concrete construction. Okay, so let's get to who and why we're here. With us this fine Tuesday is Taylor Blankenship, like I mentioned. He's one of our technical sales representatives within the precast segment, and he's been with Dayton Superior for over 10 years. He's an area sales representative in the beginning. He was then the dealer sales manager, and now, as I said, the technical sales role for precast. He has a degree from The Ohio State University, where he belonged to the Professional Business Fraternity. He is also part of the Precast Pre-Stressed Concrete Institute and plays roles in or follows the chapter of International Concrete Repair Institute, as well as American Concrete Institute. But I'm not done yet. He's also part of the National Concrete Association, and lastly, the Concrete Reinforcing Steel Institute, or CRSI. He works with our customers to help solve their precasting technical needs, and he's here with us today to talk about coil and ferrule inserts. So, Taylor, go ahead and take it away for us.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you've enjoyed this precast month that we're wrapping up here today. I'm happy to be here to go over some of our coil and ferrule inserts with you. I'll give my normal disclaimer, which is that this is just going to be a broad overview. Trying to reach a wide audience. So if you or your team wants a little more hands-on or personalized training, where you can kind of go back and forth, get some hands-on feel with the products, always feel free to reach out to us after the fact and set something up. So with that, I will get this thing going. So today we're going to talk about our ferrule and coil threaded inserts. And I think to start here, it's probably important to just differentiate between the two just a little bit. They can appear to be very similar, and there are some key differences between the two. So on the left here, we have a ferrule cap and a national coarse threaded bolt. These ferrule caps will then have wires welded to them, very similar to the coil insert on the right. And you can create with those wires, configure them in a wide variety of different patterns to create different inserts for different applications. A national coarse thread is a standardized thread. It falls under the UTS, which I believe is the Unified Thread Standard, commonly used in the US and Canada. Oh, did I do that? This means that the diameter of the ferrule has a standard thread pattern based on the ferrule itself. For example, a 1-inch ferrule will always use a 1-inch NC threaded bolt, which would be 1 inch in diameter and have 8 threads per inch. So standard threading, standard options. On the other side, on the right, we have our coil insert and coil bolt. These coil bolts utilize, or the coil inserts utilize welded wrapped wire to create the connection. And these wrapped wires are open on the top and the bottom, which allow for these coil bolts to pass fully through. Coil bolts are much coarser than an NC threaded bolt, which just means they have less threads per inch. This,
It must be this ghost of Halloween.
yeah, it's
'Cause
pretty
I'm not doing
spooky
it.
around here. I was thinking it was just me, but yeah, it doesn't matter if we're on that slide or not. So it's much coarser than an NC threaded bolt. They have less threads per inch. This allows them to be self-cleaning, and they're installed much quicker and uninstalled much quicker when you're out in the field. So coil thread is not a standard unified thread. So each manufacturer makes their coils to their own spec. The major difference to take away from that first slide, seeing the two side by side, is while they're similar, ferrules are used primarily in permanent connections, connecting electrical, HVAC, equipment, piping, while coil is only used for temporary connections, which is, in this case, in precast month, primarily going to be your lifting and handling of precast, but can also be used as attachment points for bracing, things like that. So let's go over some of the characteristics and benefits of these systems. When compared to our Swift Lift, Fleet Lift, and utility anchors that we already went over here this month, coil threaded inserts require less material and time to patch. They have a small opening compared to the recessed anchors we've talked about so far. They use the same 4-to-1 safety factor as those other systems. So a lot of the considerations are very similar when you're looking at capacities or what's going to fit for your particular application. Similar to the other systems, it's important to match inserts, lifting hardware, and bolts to a single manufacturer. As I mentioned just briefly a moment ago, each manufacturer's coil thread, being a non-standard thread, can have differences. So from a safety and compatibility perspective, we always recommend try to stay within one manufacturer's ecosystem with that, just to prevent any issues from a safety perspective. We don't want any unnecessarily failures just due to that reason. So some potential, I don't know if I'd say disadvantages, but just considerations to be made for coil is just compared to the other systems we offer, Swift Lift, Fleet Lift, Utility Lift, the coil thread is going to have a lower capacity. They do not offer ground release. So let's say you're edge picking a panel or connecting a brace on site, you're going to need to get to that connection to uninstall. Which is a little bit different than some of our other systems with our tilt hardware and Fleet Lift, for example. Lifting plates and what you select to kind of connect to your coil inserts can affect some of the capacities, and these also offer less shear capacity when you compare them to these other systems. They're going to require a setting bolt or insert plug when you place in your forms. This keeps that coil pathway clear. And these setting bolts and plugs are just going to make sure that you get that bolt engagement that you need. Hold on there, Chief. Are we on a timer here? Am I behind time?
Didn't know we were, but it looks like it.
The list of disadvantages, don't let it discourage you. All this really means is that coil threaded inserts find a niche in lifting precast in some lighter loading situations. They're an economical option in that sort of an area. So these are by no means disadvantages overall. It kind of pigeonholes them into their proper niche. Ferrule inserts, much shorter list here. Standardization is kind of their big benefit. They utilize that standard thread and they're used for permanent connections at a 3-to-1 safety factor. The bolts can be sourced from any manufacturer, kind of in comparison to the coil. That's going to help a lot because, as a precaster, you're going to be installing these, and then you may have a subcontractor out on the site that's then having to connect to these, and it just makes that process a lot easier. There's not going to be any compatibility issues with a standard thread. Also, with the finer thread of an NC thread, that just helps prevent backing out over time due to vibration or cyclic loading, anything like that. Whereas a coil thread over time would tend to back out on its own, which is why we keep it to temporary situations. So that's a lot of exposition to start with. I appreciate you sticking with me here. So we'll just kind of go over a broad overview of the system here. You can see at the top, we have a wide variety of configurations in the coil family for inserts. This gives you a lot of flexibility when you're selecting a product. With coil inserts being welded wire, we can also manufacture more custom styles as needed, just because we're able to kind of configure that in-house. Whereas if you're looking at a forged insert, your options are a lot more limited. For the connecting systems, we offer a B14 coil bolt, as well as coil rod and coil nuts. Coil rod and coil nuts can be used for fitting in the field if you're going to cut a threaded rod to length and make a connection. That's an option and adds a little more flexibility. I would say B14s are a lot more common if you're using coil quite a bit. So lifting hardware, again, a lot of flexibility. That's one of the benefits of this coil system. We offer the eye nuts and eye bolts, rope lifters, lifting plates, swivel lift plates. Just like the insert designs, this flexibility helps you kind of tailor your lifting and handling solution to your product. So where are you going to see our coil products? The versatility means you're going to see them quite a few places. You're going to be having temporary connections and lifting on structural projects. You can see them as edge lifters or brace connections on panel projects. You see them as lifters utilized in lightweight utility products, as well as, if you're a beam producer, a lot of times you'll have connections placed in your beams that will allow for connections out on the site. So you'll see them in quite a different, wide range of areas. So with all this flexibility in selecting the right insert and connecting hardware based on each project you're looking at, this slide here is just, it's to make note of an important point when you're looking at your options. And that's just to determine what your limiting factor is in the system. So on this slide here, we have an example that say we're looking at using a 3/4 inch B16 coil loop insert. So that's on our top right here. We're thinking we probably want to use an eye nut or eye bolt, maybe a swivel lift plate as an option for picking. And we can see, we've got 3,600 pounds for our eye nut as a capacity. T12, our swivel lift plate, gives us 7,200. Great. We only need 2,500 per pick point. So if that's the case, just a reminder here to always know that, in this particular example, your B16 is your limiting factor. You can see at 3/4 inches, we're only getting 1,950 pounds in tension, 1,050 in shear. So if we do need 2,500 pounds for each pick point, we'd probably just need to go to a larger diameter B16 or another style of 3/4 inch diameter insert. So on those charts, we saw that there was tension and shear values listed for our inserts. For those that aren't familiar, this graphic just shows the difference between the two. Tension loading is a straight lift away from your insert. Think like an up and down picking from the back of a precast slab, for instance, whereas shear loading is perpendicular. You can see the side-to-side force there is the shear. Think about that if you're picking from the edge of a panel, lifting and tilting it up. That's just important to note. And a lot of times on your projects, based on your rigging angles, you're kind of in that inner space between shear and tension. So just kind of a clarifier there. So now we'll just go over some of the components of our coil system. Here's the B14 coil bolt, which is very popular as, a connection between your coil insert and your, I don't think I have anything laying on my keyboard, but it may be me. I don't know. So this is very common. It allows you to have a common connection, a one-piece connection between your insert and your lifting hardware. We can make them in a wide variety of bolt diameters. Okay. Wide variety of bolt diameters and custom lengths based on the needs of your project. So we do have a lot of standards in the system, but if you have a particular application that requires something a little more fine-tuned, we can make them to any length. So when you're looking at coil bolts, it can get a little bit tricky. You can see here on the right that in order for this to all work well together, you need to have a minimum coil penetration, a bolt embedment past the top of your coil insert. You also need to take into account your hardware height. So if you're using a swivel lift plate, that will add length that you need to have on your B14. There's also just the standard setback length from the surface of the concrete that you need to take into account. And this is important because, as you can see in the bottom left here, a typical failure mode for these coil inserts is called a pigtail. And that just results from not engaging properly the full bolt, depth going well past the coil at the top of the insert. If you're only engaging a portion of that coil, it's going to not give you a capacity that you had planned for, and you're often going to see it pigtail out, just like there in that photo. So very important to measure. So we'll just briefly now go over a handful of different coil inserts just to give you an idea of some of the variety that we have. These B1 and B2 coil ties are often used to hold formwork together for cast in place walls, but they're also really effective in lifting thin wall precast elements. And as you can see here, we have quite a few standard configurations that are different bolt diameters, different coil tie lengths, and different numbering of struts. The B1 here has a 2-strut configuration. The B2 has 4 struts welded. Our B16 coil loop is a very economical and efficient insert. Lifts and handles precast elements primarily, and it's a great option for lighter loads or lighter connections on site. Our B17 is a double flared coil loop insert. So this has much higher capacities than a B16. It has 2 flared loops. These loops being spaced allow you to straddle reinforcing bar or pre-stressed strand. And you can see that their capacities are well increased over the B16. We also offer single loops like our B18. This is kind of the middle ground between the B16 and B17. Just a single loop. It's by no means a hit against the insert itself. It offers that kind of flexibility, and based on your design, you're going to be able to select an insert that meets the requirements that you're looking for while also not being overkill and requiring more investment on your part. For thin precast elements, our F53 thin slab coil is a great option. This has increased or decreased embedment depth while still providing really good capacities in both tension and shear. And I guess while this one is zoomed in a little bit, we'll make note that this is just kind of our typical table from the handbook. You can see that when you're looking at these inserts, you're going to have a bolt diameter on the left. That's just going to be the width of the coil bolt. You have your edge distances. If you are meeting those edge distances or exceeding them, you're going to get the full capacities, which are in the next columns. We break those into the tension loading and the shear loading. So based on how you plan to lift and handle your precast, there's going to be a limiting factor there, like we had mentioned. It's just good to keep that in mind. And then finally, here's some of our expanded coil inserts. These offer a really large range of capacities. You can see they span all the way from 1,800 pounds in tension all the way up for a potential over 14,000 pounds. The main takeaway here with just going over these briefly is just to give you a wide range of options, just to show you the varieties there. And you're always going to be able to select something that feels custom suited for your particular project. So covering the inserts, we'll now get into some of our lifting and handling hardware. Our swivel lift plates are a very common option. The T12 is a single swivel, and that's going to swivel on a pivot, giving you 180 degrees of rotation, whereas the T26 is a double swivel lift plate, and that offers you a full 360-degree rotation. So these are great options for heavier lifting. They've got higher capacities like we saw in our prior example, and they're very safe just because they help to properly align your force that you're applying from your insert to your rigging. And with that, it is very important just to make sure that with the T12 in particular, that you're swiveling that direction with the direction of your load. So as you can see in the picture to the left, it kind of looks like the load is going more interior of the piece, which is not going along the direction of the swivel, which, you know, if I had seen this in the field, I'd recommend, hey, let's get those realigned. Our T8 and T27 are edge lifting plates. You see these used with our T3 and T11 inserts, which are coil inserts, pretty much designed to be lifting on the edge of precast panels. Like the swivel lift plates, it's important that the load is properly aligned. You can see in the diagram on the right, you want that load going in a general direction, just straight up. The T3 and T11, these uses double insert designs, so you can see when you're connecting a bolt on either side of that pick point, you want to direct that load so that way it's engaging both properly, both inserts. If you apply a side load, as in the bottom right example, that could lead to premature failure where you're engaging one of the inserts over the other and cause some problems on your end. So important to note. We also offer, as a lifting hardware option, our P21 wire rope loop. Very simple. There's a threaded coil portion on the bottom to engage with your insert, and a wire rope on top to then connect to your rigging. This is designed only for tension picks, so you want to be lifting straight up and straight down with this option. If you apply a shear force to this, it is going to lead to binding and undue wear on the wire rope. We don't rate it for that, so something to keep in mind if you're looking at this as an option. If you're lifting a precast slab straight up, straight down, this could be something that works for you because it's covering kind of the connection as well as the lifting hardware portion. We also offer some eye bolts and eye nuts. Eye bolts are a one-piece option. Like the wire rope, they're going to provide a connection to the insert as well as a lifting hardware connection to your rigging. The eye nuts utilize a coil bolt or cut coil or coil rod to make a connection. So not the same as a one piece, but offers some flexibility. And this is just a broad overview of our threaded system. So we've covered some of the inserts here, the connecting hardware, B14 coil bolt, and the lifting hardware. As we move into some of the Ferrule stuff, I just want to again, note that this system, everything we've just seen, is more designed for temporary loading, and in this particular instance, specifically for precast lifting and handling. So for permanent connections, we're going to look at our Ferrule system briefly here. And here we have some of our Ferrule inserts on the right. You'll notice that some look very similar to their Coil brothers, but the finer NC threads make these better options for permanent loading. As I said earlier and mentioned about the NC thread in particular, it's just better over time for keeping things in place. But you can see here we have inserts, threaded setting plugs, and then also the bolts or rod that you'll use to make a final connection. So our Ferrule system also has some options that really aren't represented on the Coil side. We've got some more specialized connections just due to the nature of all the connections that are required in our industry. On the left here, we have our F54 ductile embed, and this provides pretty large capacities and can be used in both cast-in-place concrete or precast. The F42s in the middle are a really popular option for making structural connections or suspending pipe or equipment. The F41 guardrail anchors do pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Different states have different specs, and I know Dayton, we've been manufacturing these for quite some time. So depending on where you're located, there may be a state spec that we can pull from and have something on file ready to go for you if that's something you run into. So what makes the ferrules tick is this ferrule cap here. It's used in all of our Ferrule products, all the inserts that you can browse through on our website or handbook. And you can see that each size of these Ferrule caps has a standardized thread per inch count and bolt diameter that match. We list the bolt engagement as well, just because these caps are closed on the back, which is another difference between our Coil products where they're open on both ends. Since ferrules are cast in place and not part of a larger lifting and handling system, I'm not going to get into too much detail on each individual insert itself. Just know that we have variations that are going to be very similar to the Coil options. And so long as you're keeping the same considerations for things like total capacity, tension and shear loading, and your available embedment depths, the selection for these Coil versus Ferrule products are very similar. And you can apply some of the same principles from the Coil stuff we just went over to the ferrules as well. One thing that is slightly different is our setting plugs here. Since they are closed on the back, what you're going to be doing here for our F72 threaded setting plug is you can nail that through your handset formwork if you have lumber formwork. That allows you to kind of tap it into place. Then you can screw on your insert and go along with your pour. Now these are reusable, so you can take them off with a standard hex wrench. The F74s, I believe, are a little more common, and that's our plastic plug option. You can see they're available in any of the NC thread configurations. You have 3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, and 7/8. And a hole as well. And this one is also provided to tap into your formwork. That just allows you to keep those in place. Now for these coils and for the ferrules, we also, if you're a precaster with steel forms, we offer magnetic versions that are kind of made to order. So if that's something that would be of benefit, if you don't want to drill or tap through your formwork, that is also a popular option. But that's pretty much it. I'm sorry if there were some Ferrule fans in the crowd, but just based on the nature of the time we're given, I figured it would be better to just get into some of the technique of the ferrule and the thread itself. So yeah, that's about all we have. With that, Heidi, I will pass it back to you to talk about some of the
Yeah, no
resources.
problem at all. Thank you so much. I hope the slides don't like start to move on me too.
was very spooky.
Yeah, it is spooky, but it's the best day for it, right? So thank you for the presentation. You guys, if you have any questions while I'm going through our resources, you can go ahead and put those into the chat functionality in Zoom, and Taylor and or Chuck or both can get those answered for you, or I can. But our resources, so DaytonSuperior.com is a plethora of information for you. As you're seeing on the screen right now, we have product pages, whether you're doing the search functionality up in the top right-hand corner of the page, and you can just type in the product that you want, and then you can get to the product pages that have all of the great information, such as technical data sheets like you see here, or handbooks. In this case, we've got the precast handbook for you. We also have things like certification of compliance. For the Swift lift, I know we're not talking about it, but we've got all the different that do have certificate of compliance. We have letters from our quality engineering team, so we can get those to you. And there's so much more out there that is available. We have something new that I wanted to go over. I wanted to share with you guys, new to the engineering services. So if you require detailed questions to be answered, we can get those answers to you. The engineering group here at Dayton Superior, we are very precise, quick and accurate and detailed, especially when it comes to precast, tilt-up, and other assignments forming, if you have, depending on what you need. For this case, if you have like concrete areas, restrictions, clearances, you know, not typical material properties being used, we can provide detailed capacities for you for engineering numbers. We have an in-house group that can use the calculators to get you those custom values that you need accurately and very quick. In addition, we have a product page for the engineering group. And so if you have any of those precast questions that I was referring to just now, you can just search on, I believe it's under services in this page right here. If you see my, I don't know if you can see it, I'm circling the services right now, but you can't see it online. And you could fill out a submittal form and we'll get back to you, someone from the precast group. In addition, we have engineering services. We have a precast job information sheet that you can fill out and get that information to you. The technical request form that I was referring to on that precast engineering page. And of course, training. And this is where I want to just push it a little bit because Taylor is absolutely correct. Sorry for the ferrule, as he said, but if you do want more information on that, please don't hesitate to contact us at training@DaytonSuperior.com, and we can get you more customized to meet your needs and what you want to learn about. These particular Training Tuesday classes are geared for an insightful learn, very quick. It can only be like 23 minutes long, right? So that you can't go over a whole bunch of everything. But we are here for you if you need more. Okay, so we do have a question. Let me see if I can go over here and read it. Oh, yeah. Hi, Stephen. I remember you guys. Chuck had mentioned that when he went to the pouring class. So we have a comment here that one of the gentlemen on the phone with us today was at an Evergreen pour class, and Chuck was there in person training with them. So that corresponds to what I was just talking about. We can do in-house or virtual, depending on the amount of people that's needed, and we can get that all together for you. Appreciate that shout out. Is there any questions for Taylor around coil and ferrule inserts? Okay, then lastly, I've got the contact sheet up here. I think this is important because on the web page, you never quite know who to contact. And we've got 1-800 numbers for your technical assistance, for your customer service. And so even if you really don't know and you have to find a hard time using that map, you can call them and they'll direct you to the person. But we do provide those maps for you so that you can see exactly who your Dayton Superior representative is. All right, well, as a reminder, all of these are recorded and will be put out on YouTube. I just redid the pages recently to where they are much better organized, to where they have the up and coming, the 4 ones that we've done on the Training Tuesday webinar page, so you can see those. But in addition, they're organized by precast, tilt, all that good stuff. So go out there and check it out. And if there's no other questions, then we'll end it for today. And all you guys have a great Tuesday. Thank you, Taylor, for joining us. See you guys next week.